So let's see major learning theories. Jean Piaget's theory of cognitive development. Jean Piaget believed that children do not learn by simply listening to a teacher. Instead, that they learn by exploring, asking questions, solving problems, and interacting with the world around them. As children grow, the way they think about changes. This is why teachers should choose activities that are suitable for the learner's age and level of development. For example, instead of telling children that some objects float and others sink, the teacher can give them a bowl of water and different objects to test. By experimenting themselves, children discover the concept and remember it more easily. Vygotsky social cultural theory. Vygotsky believed that children learn best through interaction with other people. Parents, teachers, and classmates all help children develop new knowledge and skills. Learning happens through communication, cooperation, and guidance. For example, a teacher can ask students to work in pairs to complete a speaking activity. By helping each other, both learners improve their English. The zone of proximal development, or ZPD, is the gap between what a child can do alone and what they can do with the help of a teacher or more capable person. Learning is most effective when tasks are slightly challenging but still achievable with support. For example, a child may not be able to write a short paragraph independently. However, with guiding questions and examples from the teacher, the child can complete the task successfully. Scaffolding. Scaffolding means giving temporary support to learners while they are learning something new. As learners become more confident, the teacher gradually removes the support until they can complete the task independently. For example, when teaching story writing, the teacher may first provide pictures, useful vocabulary, and sentence starters. Later, students write their own stories without these supports. Constructivism. Constructivism is the idea that learners build their own understanding through experiences rather than simply receiving information from the teacher. Teachers guide learning instead of giving them all the answers. For example, instead of explaining the grammar rule first, the teacher gives students several example sentences and asks them to discover the rule themselves. Instructivism. Instructivism is a teacher-centered approach in which the teacher explains information directly, demonstrates new skills, and guides students step by step. This approach is useful when introducing new concepts or correcting misunderstandings. For example, a teacher explains the past tense, writes examples on the board, and then asks students to practice using the new structure. Learner-centered learning. Learner-centered learning focuses on the needs, interests, and abilities of the students. The teacher acts as a guide and creates opportunities for learners to participate actively in the lesson. For example, instead of talking throughout the lesson, the teacher encourages students to ask questions, discuss ideas, solve problems, and work together. Behaviorism. Behaviorism is the idea that learning happens through practice, repetition, and reinforcement. When learners receive praise or rewards for correct answers, they are more likely to repeat the behavior. When mistakes are corrected, they gradually learn the correct response. For example, when a child correctly says, "This is a cat," the teacher smiles and says, "Excellent." The positive feedback encourages the child to keep using English and to continue repeating that action, that act, that thing. Cognitivism. Cognitivism focuses on how the brain receives, processes, stores, and remembers information. It believes that learning is more effective when learners understand ideas instead of simply memorizing them. For example, instead of asking students to memorize vocabulary, a teacher groups words into categories such as animals, food, and colors. This helps children remember the words more easily. Teacher-centered learning. Teacher-centered learning is an approach in which the teacher leads the lesson, explains new ideas, and controls most classroom activities. Students mainly listen, observe, and complete the tasks given by the teacher. This approach is useful when introducing a new topic or teaching something that requires clear explanation. For example, a teacher explains how to use the present continuous tense, writes examples on the board, and then asks students to practice. Jeremy Bruner's discovery learning. Jeremy Bruner believed that children learn best when they discover ideas for themselves instead of receiving all the answers from the teacher. The teacher guides learners by asking questions and providing activities that encourage exploration. For example, instead of explaining the difference between nouns and verbs, the teacher gives students a list of words and asks them to sort the words into groups. Students discover the pattern themselves. Maria Montessori's educational philosophy. Maria Montessori believed that children learn best in a calm and well prepared environment where they are free to explore and make choices. Teachers act as guides rather than lecturers, allowing children to learn at their own pace. For example, children may choose different learning activities such as matching letters, building words, or reading picture books, while the teacher observes and provides support when needed. John Dewey's experiential learning. John Dewey believed that children learn by doing. Learning should be connected to real life experiences rather than memorizing facts from textbook. For example, instead of learning vocabulary about fruits only from pictures, children can bring real fruits to class, describe them, taste them, and use the new words in conversation. Reggio Emilia approach. The Reggio Emilia approach views children as curious, creative, and capable learners. It encourages children to ask questions, investigate topics that interest them, and express their ideas through different activities such as drawing, storytelling, building, and discussion. For example, if children become interested in butterflies, the teacher may design a project where they observe butterflies, read stories, draw pictures, and learn new English vocabulary related to insects and nature. Play-based learning uses play as the main way children learn. While children enjoy games and activities, they are also developing language, thinking, creativity, and social skills. For example, children can play a pretend shop where they practice English by asking for items, counting money, and speaking to classmates. Howard Gardner's multiple intelligences. Howard Gardner believed that intelligence is not limited to one ability. Children learn in different ways, and every learner has unique strengths. Some learn best through words, some through music, movement, pictures, and working with others. For example, when teaching the names of animals, one child may enjoy singing a song, another may prefer drawing, while another learns best through acting out the animals. A good child includes different activities so every child has the opportunity to learn successfully. Bloom's taxonomy. Bloom's taxonomy explains that learning develops from simple thinking to more complex thinking. Students first remember information, then understand it, apply it, analyze it, evaluate, and finally create something new. For example, after learning new vocabulary, students first remember the word, then use them in sentences, compare their meanings, and finally write a short story using the new vocabulary. Stephen Krashen's monitor model. Stephen Krashen developed several ideas about how people learn languages. He believed that children learn languages best when they understand messages that are just a little above their current level. He also believed the learner needs a relaxed and encouraging environment because stress and anxiety make learning more difficult. For example, a teacher tells a simple story using pictures, gestures, and familiar vocabulary. Even if students do not understand every word, they can understand the main message and gradually acquire new knowledge. Explicit teaching. Explicit teaching means the teacher explains a rule or concept directly before students practice it. Learners know exactly what they are learning and why. For example, the teacher explains the regular past tense verbs end in ed, gives several examples, and then asks students to complete practice exercises. Implicit teaching. Implicit teaching allows learners to discover language naturally through meaningful communications instead of receiving direct explanations. Students notice patterns while using the language. For example, after listening to several stories about yesterday's activities, students begin using past tense verbs without first studying the grammar rule. Immersion versus direct instruction. Immersion means learners are surrounded by the target language and hear it throughout the lesson. They learn naturally by listening, observing, and communicating. Direct instruction means the teacher explains the language clearly before students practice it. For example, in immersion, teacher speaks mostly English during class and uses pictures, gestures, and actions to help students understand. A teacher using direct instruction first explains the meaning and grammar before asking students to use the language. Now, affective factors. Affective factors are the emotions and feelings that influence learning. Confidence, motivation, interest, and a sense of safety help children learn more effectively, while fear, anxiety, and embarrassment can make learning more difficult. For example, if a teacher laughs at a child's mistake, the child may stop practicing. However, if the teacher encourages effort and treats mistakes as part of learning, the child becomes more confident. Motivation in language learning. Motivation is the desire to learn. Children who enjoys learning, feel successful, and receive encouragement are usually more motivated to participate and improve. A motivated learner is more likely to practice, ask questions, and continue learning. For example, a teacher who uses games, stories, praise, and interesting activities creates a positive classroom where children feel excited to learn English.